Okay, please welcome editor Paul Rogers.
Hello.
Hello. Paul, I don't think anybody's going to has looked at a fanny pack the same ever since seeing that. I mean, talk about editing that scene. Like,
That was one of the first scenes that I cut, and I think it was important for me to prove to myself that I could do it. So they shot that scene pretty early, and this film is interesting because, you know, it's got that kind of Hong Kong aesthetic, but for these fight scenes where in Hong Kong they would take a week to shoot these films. It was a half day or a full day, just one day to shoot that scene. So that scene I cut and brought it to set, and they showed the crew. And I remember Key, who plays Waymond, couldn't watch it. He was too nervous to see how he had done. And they showed, you know, during the lunch break, they showed that scene, and my heart was pounding, and Michelle was there. And right after the scene stopped playing, Michelle just booked it out of the room, and I was like, oh no, I've messed up. She hated it. And what I realized later is she was booking it to Key's dressing room to tell him, it's incredible, you did a great job. But in the moment, I was like, Michelle Yeoh hates my editing. What am I doing?
But it all worked out in the end.
It all worked out.
I just want to know, what was your reaction when you got the script and when you got the call from the
I was completely overwhelmed and intimidated, and yeah, I mean, it was beautiful. I had a weird introduction to the script because Dan Kwan and Daniel Shiner are good friends, and they lived a couple blocks from where I lived and where I work in Highland Park in Los Angeles. And so they called me up and said, hey, we have this movie we're writing, and we want to walk through the story with you. They have been doing this with other people, just to kind of give them a way to talk through the script and see what's working and what's not working. And so I sat in Dan Kwan's back office, and they talked through the script, and they acted it out, and did the sound effects, and they had this wall behind them that just had all this crazy stuff, like hot dog fingers and raccoonie, and I was like, this is nonsense. That must be for something else. But this is really cool. And then slowly I started to realize, like, wait a second, these words mean things. And I kept crying. I kept breaking down during the film. It was this really beautiful, or during them acting out the film. And at the end of it, I was like, and there was no discussion of me working on it. It was just like, we want to talk through this with you. And at the end, I was just like, I really want to see this film. I hope you make it. I need a couple of days to recover from this experience. And so then when I got the script, it had swapped from, before it was a father-daughter story, and it was possibly Jackie Chan involved, and so I was kind of picturing Jackie Chan, and then it swapped to a mother-daughter, and they told me that it was Michelle Yeoh was who basically wrote it for, and I was like, I have to be a part of it. I have to work on this film. Michelle Yeoh, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was such an important film for me. And as I was reading it, I was like, I can't, if I think about editing this film, I'll become overwhelmed. I can't do that, so I have to just read it as a fan, read it as someone who wants to see the film being made. And actually, Matthew Hannum, who cut Swiss Army Man, I asked him if he could grab a drink with me before I started on the film, and I just said, please help me. You've worked with these guys before I'd worked with them on a lot of shorter projects. He'd worked with them on a feature. And he gave me some great advice, which was, don't think about the big picture yet. Just take it one moment at a time, one scene at a time, and that's the only way you can get through the first cut. You're gonna watch the full cut after that, and it's gonna be bad. But then you can start breaking it down and figuring out what's not working and what's working.
What's so beautiful about the film is that even though we go through a million multiverses, some for brief seconds, that car park scene at the end is just devastating. it really shows the mother and daughter relationship. Like, how did you maintain that thread throughout whilst going through all the crazy action, the crazy universes, and then ending at that moment?
That was the scene that kept me up at night, in a good way. There were a couple of scenes, but that was one of them. And that scene, we realized through the process of screenings, another piece of advice that Matt Hannum gave me was screen it as often as possible. And this was something that Dan and Daniel had taken from the process of making Swiss Army Man, was every 2 weeks we would screen the film. Once we had a rough cut, every 2 weeks we would screen it, no matter where it was. And it was sometimes really painful because we were in the middle of trying new things. We realized through the process of screening that last 15 minutes, that last 5 minutes really depended on the first 15 minutes in a lot of ways, on whether we connected with these characters, whether we connected with Evelyn and Joy and Waymond. Everybody seemed to connect with Waymond pretty quick, right? He's incredibly charming and you just root for him. You know, Evelyn and Joy, they're tough, right? And they have a lot of walls up. Waymond doesn't have those walls up. So in a couple of the early screenings, people were really connecting with Waymond's story. And then when it came to the parking lot, they were like, yeah, that was nice that they got to get back together. And so, yeah, really a lot of that parking lot scene, I realized pretty early on that one of both Stephanie Hsu and Michelle Yeoh's superpowers was their ability to listen. So as much as possible, I would try to just focus on them listening to each other. Because also throughout the film and throughout in my opinion, throughout their lives, they haven't been actually listening to each other. So that parking lot scene was the first time that they're really connecting and hearing each other. So watching them hear each other and listen to each other was more powerful than watching them talk at each other, because that's what they've been doing their whole lives.
Yeah. Amazing. Paul, yes, please give him a round of applause for that. Amazing work. Paul, I'm going to see you back in a few minutes for the panel conversation. Congratulations. Stay put, and we are going to bring up a clip from Avatar: The Way of Water.